Hi friends, nice to see you back at Garfin's creation. Let's decorate this traditional wedding cake with me. Come along and watch till the end how we decorate this fruit cake covered with marzipan and fondant. These traditional wedding cakes are made mostly for Catholic weddings. They may be tiered cake, but I have made a rectangle 10 by 12 cake. I have baked this fruit cake in a 10 by 12 rectangle cake pan. The recipe for this fruit cake or plum cake is already on my channel. I'll put the link down in the description box so you can check it. I have taken 4 times the quantity of the recipe mentioned. I have baked this cake 2 days previously and I had cling wrapped it and kept it in the fridge. So now when I have to decorate it, I'll just get it out and let it come to room temperature. Once the cake is at room temperature, we will knead the marzipan and roll it into a large rectangle and then put it over the cake. The recipe for this marzipan too is on my channel and I'll be sharing the link in the description box below. This marzipan too I have prepared a day earlier and I have used 400 grams of cashew nut to prepare this recipe. So I'll knead this marzipan now with some rose water till it's nice, soft and like a dough type. The marzipan tends to get dry after a period of time. So you can knead it back into a soft dough by adding some rose water and just knead it gently. The total weight of this marzipan is around 1 kg. So do watch till the end as I'll be telling you the weight of all the ingredients that will go into this cake. Once the marzipan is well kneaded, we will roll it into a large rectangle. To make things easier, I'll be using a large plastic sheet. You can also use a large silicone mat to roll the same. This plastic sheet I got it from the stationery shop which they use to cover school books. It will help us in lifting the marzipan once it's rolled so that we can cover the cake well. Keep rolling the marzipan into a large rectangle. If the edges of the marzipan tends to get apart, you can just pull it together and then start rolling again. I will roll the marzipan a little more bigger than the actual size of the cake. Do watch this video till the end as I will mention the weight of the marzipan, the fruit cake and also the fondant that will go into making this cake. So now this has been rolled into a very large rectangle to cover the entire cake. Before we could put it over the cake, make sure that the measurements are a little bigger as compared to the cake. I am just folding the plastic backwards so that the marzipan goes properly over the cake. We have to make sure that the marzipan sheet covers the entire cake. Now gently lift the plastic from the other side and just flip it over the cake. Once you have flipped the marzipan over the cake, just secure it tightly to the cake by just pressing it towards the cake, and if it cracks, no problem, we can get that fixed later. Only we're making sure that the marzipan does not tear more, so just press it towards the cake. I have not used any water or any solution to stick the marzipan to the cake. And if you see little cracks, just press the marzipan and it will cover the cake well. Trim off the excess marzipan from the sides of the cake and we'll continue doing this on all the 4 sides of the cake. If you want to cover a fruit cake with just the marzipan, using the same technique, just roll the marzipan a little thicker. You can also color it with the color of your choice. You can also create some toppers with the same marzipan recipe and place it on the cake as well. I have finished cutting off all the excess from the sides of the cake. And those little gaps I'll fill it with little marzipan pieces. As we'll be putting the fondant over it, all this will be hidden under it. This is the first wedding cake that I'll be making. I do have a video for the communion cake toppers. I have other videos on cake decorating too, like whipped cream and ganache cake as well. I'll put those links as well in the description box if you would like to watch them. Lastly, I will just smoothen out all over. So this is done, and I will just clean the cake board before we could add the fondant over it. So after covering the cake with the masspan, all that is left, I will deduct this from the 1 kg masspan I had used initially. So that will be the total amount of masspan we use for this cake. So that is approximate 830 grams of masspan I have used for this cake. Now before we could cover the cake with the fondant, I've cleansed the table clean, and I'm using Vision brand of fondant. To be 100% sure the table is clean, use a piece of the fondant and clean the table with it. This fondant is a very good brand for covering cakes. It would be hard and we need to knead it till it becomes soft and pliable. I have taken a 1 kg fondant pack and I'll use all of it to roll it into a large rectangle. And after I have covered the cake, whatever is left at the side, that will be deducted from this to get the net weight of the fondant used for this cake. So after kneading, the fondant is nice and soft. Use some corn flour to dust the table so that the fondant does not stick while we roll it out. Using a rolling pin, I will now roll this into a large rectangle larger than the size of the cake. We would need to cover the cake fully from all the sides as well. So we need to roll it not too thick or not too thin. If the fondant is rolled thin, it might break while we put it over the cake. If you are a beginner in fondant cakes, roll it a little thicker to be on the safer side. And this 1 kg fondant is enough to roll a 10 by 12 cake size. Once again, make sure you have the correct size, little larger than the size of the cake. If you find any air bubbles, just prick it with a pin and then roll it over it and smoothen it out. If you have the very long rolling pin, you can use that. But since I don't have that, I'm using a long PVC pipe. This is available in hardware shops. Just wash it thoroughly before we could use it. I will just dust some corn flour over this and roll the fondant over the PVC pipe so it's easy to carry and put it over the cake. Having a long PVC pipe or a long rolling pin really helps in lifting the fondant and putting it properly over the cake. So now just position the fondant a little away from the cake and roll it over the cake. If you are not satisfied, you can roll it back and then position it again and place it over the cake once more. Once the fondant is over the cake, we will press the sides quickly so that there is less breakage. This will ensure that the fondant does not stretch sideways and you do not get any cracks. I will press the sides as well and the corners also. I have not used any egg white or neutral gel on the masspan before placing the fondant. I have placed the fondant directly over the masspan. As the masspan was moist enough, the fondant got stuck to it well. Now I will smoothen up the top and the sides of the cake as well so that the fondant sticks well to the masspan. And also we get a good finishing on the sides as well. I had baked the cake in a 10 by 12 inches cake pan. The cake board here I have used is 12 by 16 inches. So we have sufficient space at the side of the cake as well, which you can utilize for further decoration. The fondant is well secured to the cake. I am using a pair of scissors to snip off the corners of the fondant so that the extra fondant and the corners get cut off easily and you get a nice finishing at the corners as well. And now it's time to cut off the excess fondant at the sides of the cake as well. You can also use a pizza cutter instead of a knife here. The excess fondant that I am cutting now after I have weighed it was approximate 165 grams. So from the total 1 kg of fondant that I have used, I'll minus this 165 grams, so that will be a total of 835 grams of fondant I have used to cover this cake. So I will now just knead this excess fondant and use it for the decoration of this cake. Once the excess fondant has been cut, I will just make the edges a little bit sharp, though it is not necessary. I'll just try to smoothen it out also, so there are no rough edges. This is completely optional, or you can just smoothen it out with a smoother. It's not compulsory to have very sharp edges on your cake. You can just smoothen it out as much as you can. If you are new to fondant cakes, start with smaller cakes. So if you want to cover a fruit cake with marzipan and fondant, I hope all the tips shared in this video would be helpful to you. So now you would just get an idea, approximate how much of fondant or marzipan you would need to decorate the cake of your choice. So I've just now finished smoothing out all the sides and our cake is almost done. Just dust off the excess corn flour and our cake is ready to be decorated. I just wanted to make a simple cake. So for this monogram cake, I just got this acrylic topper made. I'll be placing this in the center of the cake, and to stick it, I'll be using some neutral gel. Just take some neutral gel on a brush and cover the back side of the topper with it. This will help in sticking the topper to the fondant. And then to get an oval outline around this monogram, I've just used a container. Place the plastic container, just position it and just press it lightly so that I get the marking on the fondant. And then I'll be using some sugar beads around the outline that we have just marked. I'll be very lightly using little water on a brush so that the sugar beads stick to the fondant. I'll just go around the line and stick the sugar beads, and this is how it looked at the end. To decorate it further with some fondant flowers, I'll be using this silicone mold which has a nice beautiful spray of flowers. I will just dust the silicone mold with some corn flour so that the fondant does not stick into it. For the decoration part, you can just use your imagination and also use some cutters to cut out some flowers and decorate the cake as you wish. So now to calculate the total weight of the cake, the fruit cake that I had baked was almost 3 kgs by weight. So adding the marzipan and the fondant to it, the net weight of this cake was almost 4.5 kgs. All I have done, I have weighed each and individual items used in this cake to get the net weight of the cake. So now back to this fondant spray, I just roll it with a rolling pin and remove off the excess so that the design comes out neat and clean after we demold it. So here is the beautiful spray after demolding it from the mold. I decided to keep the cake theme in silver and white. So I've made this spray in white fondant. And I'll need to make many of these and keep it ready before placing it on the cake. So here is a tray full of these spray. We have to keep this ready so that you will know how to place and position them on the cake before we actually stick it to the fondant. I'm just placing this fondant flower spray over the cake just to get an idea what looks best. So in this way you can decide where you would like to place the flowers and what looks best. I'll be covering the entire cake with these flower sprays. And later on I'll be dusting it with some silver dust and fine sugar sprinkle beads. Once you are happy with the position of the flower sprays and the cake seems to be looking good, you can go ahead and use little water and stick the spray of flowers to the fondant. I would also like to mention about this monogram acrylic topper which I had got it personalized and made. You can just visit a nearby cake accessory shops that sells all the cake products and ask them to make it for you. This acrylic toppers come with a very fine plastic over it. Do not peel that before positioning it on the cake. Once your cake is completely ready, then only peel off the plastic from the topper. As you can see, I'm just sticking the flower sprays where I had positioned them earlier. Now put some sprays on the sides as well. I'm so glad that you are watching the video till here. I hope you continue watching as we finish decorating this cake till the end. I have now mixed some silver dust and Evaporex. And just to get a nice shining effect, I'll be just brushing it over the flour sprays. This is edible dust and it's easily available online and in cake accessory shops as well. I'll be adding this for all the flour sprays. I also have a video on where you can make your own personalized cake boards. I'll put the link to in the description box below. And now I'll be using very fine silver sugar beads to decorate it further. And there you can see a closer look at how the spray looks, and I'll be decorating the rest of it in the same way. I'm not able to actually capture the glitter that the spray has with the silver dust. Now to decorate the border of the cake, I'll be using the string pearl beads mold, dusting some corn flour inside and then removing off the excess. Using a long strip of fondant, just push it into the mold and use some corn flour if it tries to stick to your hands. We need to press this very deeply inside to get the proper beads pulled out once we demold it. This mold is a little bit difficult to use, so there's no problem when you demold it. The beads might break off. You can always stick it on the cake itself. So now I've just pressed it nice and well, and now let's demold it. I'll just flip it over and try to pull the beads out. As I said, if it breaks, there's no problem. We can always join it on the cake. And then using some water again with a brush, just brush the sides of the cake and very gently we'll place them on the sides of the cake. If it breaks into pieces, no problem. Just fix those pieces next to each other so that there is no gap and it looks like a one long single piece. So I'll put this border beads all around the four sides of the cake. And once the border is fixed, I will just brush off the excess corn flour or any silver dust on the cake. And there it is. This wonderful, beautiful white wedding cake is ready. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you do, please do like, share and subscribe to Garfin's Creation. See you soon in the next video. Till then, take care. Goodbye.